A senior banker, somebody who seems particularly patronising, I was going to say egregiously patronising, but that word is being slightly overused. It was once used beautifully by Julie Andrews when she rejected the Tony Award because she wanted to stand with the egregiously overlooked. But Huw Pill, who seems frankly a bit of a plonker. The Bank of England's chief economist has warned us that we should stop. We should stop trying to get more. We should accept that we're worse off. And rising prices have made the whole country poorer, and attempts to bid up wages are merely prolonging the agony. Well, what he doesn't accept and what he doesn't recognise is that it's absurd for everybody to accept that they are poorer and to stop asking for more money. Somebody who's on £190,000 salary is not in a position to dictate what somebody who can barely make ends meet should accept as a standard of living, particularly not when Brexit promised that it would give us all better living standards. We're actually seeing worse living standards today. And the tax breaks, which should be coming in by an apologetic government that didn't deliver what it promised, should be delivering more money for those people who are poorer off and need it, rather than tax breaks for the oil companies and non-dom status for people who can afford it. We should have a reforming government that is mindful of the mistakes that were made by not only Boris Johnson in delivering Brexit, but more importantly by Liz Truss in her hoiking up Kwasi Kwarteng's prodigious package, who instead hoiked up the price of our mortgages, sent the Bank of England reeling. And those are the people who should now be apologetic and should be dictating a new approach to fiscal responsibility. That fiscal responsibility is about putting money in the pockets of those people who need it and who have worked very hard to keep us where we are, particularly those people who saved our lives and who we stood on the doorsteps clapping during COVID. People like the nurses and the doctors, people who run our transport system, which has been run down by this government. We shouldn't be focusing on HS2. We should be focusing on making sure what transport links we've got are actually functioning, because at the moment, the transport we've got doesn't get us where we want to get to at the time when we had planned. It's unreliable. Why? Because we aren't paying people to do their job. Because people are frustrated with good reason, because they voted for Brexit, because they voted for this government, and this government has let them down. Instead, this government is simply putting money in the pockets of those people who can already afford it. This government has apologies to make. And instead, we have patronising individuals like Huw Pill telling us what we can and what we cannot aspire to. And Huw Pill's words are being printed in the Daily Telegraph, which surely is a newspaper which is quintessentially aspirational. It's a newspaper, the organ of the Conservative Party, even more so than Kwasi Kwarteng's prodigious package. Kwasi Kwarteng went wrong. Liz Truss went wrong. Boris Johnson went wrong. Somebody at some point has to go right. And it shouldn't simply be down to the colour of the party. The Conservative Party has made mistakes. It should put them right. That's its duty. That's its moral duty, if not its political duty, or its political flag, or its political colours. Underlying the political flag waving is a moral core. And if we've lost that moral core, frankly, we need to give up. I don't think we have lost that moral core. I think it's buried in stupidity, buried in people who are stealing dressing gowns from their own place of work, buried in the stupidity of people who are scattering cocaine where they're working, in the House of Parliament, in number 10, in Chevening, and wherever they happen to be working, in the corridors of power. Hoover it up and stop being so self-indulgent and get on with your work. And meanwhile, negotiate with people who've been working significantly harder than you have, who didn't have the opportunity to party during lockdown and play frivolous games in and out of the bathrooms of the grace and favour lodging of the Foreign Secretary. It's time to get real, and this present government needs to face up to its responsibilities. And meanwhile, on the other side, I think we have to recognise that the old traditions of collective bargaining are not working well enough with this government. We need to find new ways of doing it. And hammering on about strikes and about protest marches and so on, when we can see the government constructing laws to restrict these, is not the way forward. We have a 21st century stock of new ways to reach people, of new ways to engage with the public and to engage with ministers and to drive them to the negotiating table. New ways. And the unions are not using those. There's a lot of opportunities which are being missed because we're clinging to old ideas. We need to rethink. The government needs to rethink. The unions need to rethink. But I think at the moment, in addition, there is no question that the unions command the support of the British public. No question. So at this moment, the only thing the unions can do is to lose that support, and that would be foolish. The government, meanwhile, is losing support, and the elections which are coming up this week will demonstrate that, unfortunately. It's now time for the government to rethink and to think, what are its priorities? Its priorities are to atone, to apologise, to correct the things that it got wrong. And there's a long list. But it should start with the nurses, and it should start with the train drivers and the train unions. It should start with the teachers. It should start with those workers who are making the country function. And then it should move on to everything else. And if it can't get this right, it should resign, and we should have a general election.